There is another phrase in the book, and after my terrible pronunciation earlier, I'm scared to give this one a go. But the phrase translates as belonging to Scotland. It's Alba and Dwalkas, yeah. So I just wonder, because we've been talking there about sort of the connection to history, but obviously, Graham, you now live in New Zealand. Sam, you're a modern guy. You've been filming in the States and, lived in London. But this idea of belonging to Scotland seems to me to be really particular. And I wondered whether you could both tell us a little bit about what that really means to you. Graham, I'll ask you first. In what ways you feel that connection to Scottish culture and history?
Yeah, I feel I've felt it whenever I've been in Scotland. It's somewhat difficult to actually put into words, because it's very much a feeling that even when I used to get off the train at Queen Street Station or at Central Station in Glasgow, you could feel this sort of hum coming from the ground around you of just the people that you feel connected to. And one of the things that I always found whenever I was in Scotland, I never laughed as much as when I was in Scotland. Laughter. I think it's partly just the dreich weather, the sort of the endless nights of the winter and all the rest of it, that just engenders a really great sense of humor. And so laughter is such a huge part of the Scottish experience. And I'm sure, I suspect that even on the battlefield at Culloden in 1746, people were exchanging jokes, just making a laugh, just having a go at each other, taking the piss, whatever you want to call it. That would have been part of the whole thing. And I've just always loved that about Scotland. It's got a great humor about itself and about other people, and a great curiosity about others. Whenever I've been in a taxi cab in Scotland, taxi drivers in Scotland ask you about you.
Notorious,
who you are, what's your story, where are you from? They don't want to talk about themselves so much, and I think that's the sign of a very strong, outward-looking and secure culture.
And Sam, how would you just sort of, because that phrase, I believe, is engraved on your sword, is that right, in the
That's
show?
right, yeah.
Which you carry everywhere, don't you?
Well, obviously, yeah.
I do. I'm holding right now, yes. Dulchas, yeah. And it means a sense of belonging or sense of home. And it was something that I was taught by a Gaelic friend of mine back in season 1. And it's interesting that it came up in writing the book and in shooting the TV show, and we talk about it. But it's something, for instance, I was always skeptical when we have tourists come to the UK or to Scotland, especially American tourists or Canadian, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm Scotch, or I'm part Scotch." And for a long time, I was like, "No, you're not," or like whatever, like whatever. And I just I realized, foolishly, that of course these people, they left and they migrated to Canada and America and to wherever, to Australia and New Zealand, and only a couple of generations ago, 3 or 4 generations ago. But there must be something in you genetically that has this longing for home. And actually, I think it's extremely, extremely strong with Scotland. I don't know why, but I now fully understand what that's about. It's like they can't describe what it is, and they don't know what it is. But when they come to Scotland, they feel at home. They feel that there's something there that grounds them. And I think it's a genetic thing. I really do.
We've spoken a little bit about some of the sort of ways in which you've been placed in peril, shall we say, Graham, whether it's a tandem bicycle or just simply being driven by Sam along the highways.
Driven mad, yeah.
Then driven mad, yes. But there is a part in the book where there is a moment where you talk about, Graham, you quite literally saved Sam's life during the course of filming Outlander.
No, I mean...
You're so ungrateful. It's so extraordinary. I called
saved his own life.
I called out to warn you, and
before you ran away.
And then of course, I ran away. Yes, because there was a tractor coming through the tent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, but Sam has always denied that I really saved his life. But that's okay. That's okay. I'll just carry on, just being his guardian angel with no thanks.
Graham has this great, and probably why he does so well is that he's very good at preserving his own skin, and I think it became quite a source of amusement, not only on our show and on the book during shooting this and writing this, but also even on Outlander. There was a time when I remember we were shooting with a big whole sort of village scene, and at one point there was a Highland cow or Highland coo, and it started to buck and wasn't very happy about shooting such long hours. Graham sidled up to me and was like, I know, I have an escape plan. I know where I'm going. I'm going over that wall. And you could see him I could watch him during the takes. He was sort of edging closer and closer to the wall. So just in case he would just be over that wall. So I would say stick with McTavish if you want to survive.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. Yes, I when we were doing Outlander, I do remember with the horses, people had varying degrees of good fortune with horses. I was very fortunate with mine. Mine was just so patient with me. But a couple of the other cast members weren't so lucky. And I do remember in an episode of, we were going away from the castle, going on to Rent. It was the end of the episode. The light was fading. I was at the front. Everyone else was at the back. And I remember all I could hear was, I think it was Stephen Walters and Gunter Rourke screaming in the background as their horses were trying to throw them to the ground. And I didn't even look round.
No, carried on.
I just made sure that I was in focus and the camera was on me, and that's fine.
Even within the course of this conversation, people will hear the sort of, the way the two of you kind of, the repartee, the sort of the conversation that happens with the two of you. And reading this book is very much like that. It is a conversation between the two of you in telling that story. But how did you write it? Because, of course, it involves both of you. Were you literally sort of sending chunks to each other, or did you both sort of set down your version of events? It's quite an undertaking, obviously, to write something together.
We started writing basically when lockdown, sort of international lockdown happened, and we were different parts of the world. Graham was in New Zealand, I was in Scotland, and we started writing. Well, talking about technology and Graham's sometimes dubious grasp on how to use technology. It started off by emailing each other documents, and then it turned into, I think, a Word document. But then after a while, Graham accuses me of locking him out of the Word document, which I didn't do. So then we had to change to a Google document, which he then was able to access, and that was fine. But we were writing at the same time, and we would sort of have bi-weekly Zoom calls and have a chat about what we had to do next, and then go away and do our homework, and it would be fun because you'd be writing about the same thing at the same time on this shared document, and you could actually see the other person writing, which I think is where this sort of back and forth started, where we started to, dare I say, correct each other in.
Yes, it was generally correcting each other. You would read something and you would go, well, I'm not sure that's exactly how that happened. And so you would write something and you'd suddenly see, maybe Sam's cursor would start and you'd see him writing. It was quite fascinating, actually. I've never done anything like that before, where you're actually having that real-time conversation via a shared document. It was, but that was the basis of the book. Absolutely.
We've spoken a little bit about the two of you driving each other around Scotland and probably around the bend a little bit too. But I want to ask a little bit about what drives you personally as people, because Sam, I noticed at the end of the book, you're described in your bio as a philanthropist. And I was like, blimey, that's quite a strong word for such a young man. And then I read what you had actually done, and I felt suitably chastened, because the word philanthropist obviously coming from the incredible fundraising that you've done for various charities, but also the fact that you are producer for these TV programs we've been talking about, a huge driving force. And in fact, Graham is very generous towards the end of the book in talking about his admiration for the way that you take life by the scruff of the neck. And you seem to be incredibly driven in creating all of these things. Where does that come from?
That is a good question. And philanthropist does sound rather I don't know, rather generous, but I mean, I think it's fair enough. I think I have, I don't know, a drive that's come from the fact that I never had the opportunity before. Maybe I think Outlander has given me a lot of opportunity, and I've realized, that now is the time that I can do these things. And I think before, being a jobbing actor, you're always held back by just your circumstances or trying to make ends meet, or not having time, or not having the right contacts. And suddenly I realized that I have all these great contacts, and I love doing business, and I love seeing what the next challenge is. And I think Graham's described me as not having really thought about the consequences of things. And I think if I actually think about the consequences, it would freak me out. So I guess jump in feet first and see what will happen, and hopefully come up, breathing. I think that's what probably works with our relationship as well. We're kind of, dare I say, yin and yang in a way.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you're definitely, the risks, the physical risks that you're willing to take are certainly much greater than mine. Which is admirable. I mean, it's great, and it was a wonderful thing that you took me out of my comfort zone on many, many occasions, and I really, but actually in a strangely enjoyable way. I mean, not having my backside destroyed on a tandem bike necessarily, but other things. But I also think that actors by sort of nature are all a bit like that. You benefit a great deal as actors by not really knowing what's coming, and so you just throw yourself into things. And I've certainly found that in my life, that an actual lack of preparation sometimes is a real advantage. That you,
But I think also you're always waiting for someone else to make a decision for you, to tell you what you can and can't do. As an actor, you've got this job or you haven't, or you're auditioning for something, and it just feels like actually taking control of your career and your destiny, that sort of thing. It's so rewarding, and I think I enjoy all these sort of other endeavors, and I think they all feed back into each other. I think I remember going, I was working on Outlander whilst shooting this Clanlands first part of Men in Kilts, and I remember it would give me energy going to do Clanlands, because it was something different and something to sort of throw myself into. And I think it all feeds back. It's sort of creativity is also energy, and keeps you going.
It is great to have that feeling of being in charge of your own destiny as well. Because as you rightly say, so much of an actor's life is spent waiting on other people to give you permission to do what you enjoy. And with this, I mean, I remember very early on, I think Sam and I standing together with a guest before we did something, and just both realizing what enormous fun this was, that we were in charge. It was like, hey, we don't need to ask anybody. We're just going to do this, and we're going to ask this, and then we're going to go here. And that was rather wonderful, actually.
And it's the same with the book, I think. It really is. I guess it's very personal, right? I mean, as it can be, and we, from the illustrations to the quotes to the bits of poetry or whatever. It's lovely to be able to craft something and create something, and it was a really fun process.
Now, I have reached the stage where I've realised that the glass with which I said cheers at the beginning of this conversation needs a refill, which means I've probably taken up far too much of your time already, gentlemen. I mean, it's been a brilliant conversation, and it's fascinating to hear more about your relationship on the show, and also, obviously, in making this book. But it's just great to have a bit of time to talk to you about it today, so thank you so much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, really fun. Really good to chat.